Welcome to the Out of the Trance podcast. I'm Andrea DeVellis, and today we are talking about money and the nervous system. So in 2023, I set out to focus on my nervous system and to focus on my finances. And I didn't realize how interrelated they were until I started doing the work. At the end of the year, last year, I met our next guest, Nikki Bartol. Nikki was giving a talk on money and the nervous system at an event we were both attending. And she was dropping so much wisdom, and so much of it really resonated with me because she talked about money and the survival instinct. So I was thrilled to get to know Nikki. She's become a friend, and I'm thrilled to be talking to her today. Nikki is a CPA, a money mindset coach, and she helps entrepreneurs, particularly solopreneurs, create confidence around wealth. So without further ado, welcome to the podcast, Nikki. How are you? I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you. I'm amazing. I'm really excited to dive in.
Me too. I've so enjoyed our conversations that we've had thus far. So I'm thrilled to be bringing it to the audience. So I think the best place to start is actually your story and what brought you to the work that you're doing today. So I'll let you tell a little bit about your background and then we'll get into the stuff.
Amazing. So a very long story, try to cut as short as possible. I am a CPA accountant. I actually worked at PwC, which is one of the leading accountancy firms in the world, for about 6 or 7 years. However, I realized that as much as money and, numbers are important and make a huge difference, I didn't love the corporate environment. And I was like, I'm going to leave and I'm going to go do something more important in the world. So obviously I went to India to do my yoga teacher training. And I was obsessed with hula hooping, so I moved down to the Dominican Republic and performed with the hula hoop on the beach for a while. I fire hula hooped, all that. And then I got embraced into the digital nomad scene, and I started traveling around the world. And in that time, I was searching for this thing that I was going to do and hiding my accountant side. Most people didn't even know I was an accountant. I was like the hula hooping, hippie, acro yoga girl. Meanwhile, to pay for the bills while I was doing all of that, I was like CFO of various startups and still diving into my accountant world, but trying to hide it and stay away from it because I was searching for the thing that was going to make a difference. So I got obsessed with personal development. I helped publish a gratitude journal. I started hosting workshops and public speaking about gratitude. And I felt like I was caught between two worlds, this accountant side that was still there, but trying to push away with this kind of more hippie personal development, wanting to do better in the world. And it wasn't until about 3 or 4 years ago now almost that I realized that both of those sides of me were the thing that was going to make a difference and were the thing that could actually really help people. Because what I found in the nomad scene and the entrepreneur scene is that so many people had imposter syndrome around their business because they had no idea what was going on with their finances. And when we are our business, our mindset around money can be just this massive monster. And you need to look at both at the same time. You need to work on your money mindset, and you also need to look at the numbers, and they intertwine. And in that, when you do that, it's focused around creating that calm nervous system so that you can find alignment in your life and in your business. So that was kind of how I turned into all of this.
Wow. I love the journey that you've had and the realizations that you've had. And I think that so many of us are having about that survival instinct, that evolutionary bias that our nervous system is sort of trained to do to help us survive, and that how that impacts what we attract in terms of abundance, wealth, money, and then, what that brings into our lives, because we need money to survive, but we also need a calm nervous system to thrive. So how did that manifest in your own world as a reflection of your clients?
Yeah, well, it was actually a large journey to even get to the point where I started talking about the nervous system, because what I realized that, for the first few years of my business, I was very much, I'm a CPA accountant, and that's why you should listen to me. And I also did a mindset. So it was really focused on just these pillars. And it was my first 3 pillars were, I think it was financial planning, money management, and money mindset, because it was just more so know your numbers while also kind of looking at your mindset and how you need the mindset to get to the numbers. And then I dove into human design a couple of years ago, which unraveled a whole side of things. And then last year I did trainings on, somatic work and inner child work and shadow work. And what I realized when I was working with my clients, a lot of my messaging was, let me help you become magnetic to money. Let me help you manage your money. Let me help you stop avoiding it. And that was it. And it was very much about making more money. And then I started working with my clients and I realized half of the time we didn't talk about money. And then I started having clients where, I had one client last year where at the end of 4 months working together, our last call, she's like, I got a surprise for you. And she's like, I'm shutting down my entire business. And I'm like, wait, what? And she's like, working with you has made me realize and come back to myself more than I ever thought was possible. And I don't want to be in the New York hustle. I don't want to feel like I'm proving myself and making more money and doing all that. But when I come back to myself, I've realized I want to be supported by my husband. I want to move out of New York. I want to start a family and a garden and live close to my family. And when I saw that, I kind of had my own little mental breakdown of I'm so disconnected from the messaging of what I have. And it's so much deeper than that. And all of my clients were having this life-changing transformations in our container that were so much past money that I had to stop and be like, what is it that I actually do? And it was this whole existential crisis that I had last year, really trying to discover the depth of what it was that I was doing. And eventually I came to the point where I realized that money equals survival. And when we are solopreneurs and we're responsible for the income that we're generating, we can constantly be in survival mode, which disconnects us from ourself, which disconnects us from our mission, and just creates just this constant stress. And when you create that calm nervous system around money, which was really what I was doing, it created life-changing transformations, because not only does it change how you interact with money, it changes how you interact with the trust in yourself, how you interact with time, how you interact with your business, and really brings you back into alignment of what it is that you want to do. And usually whatever that we always have that next level of who we want to be and the potential we feel inside of ourselves, but we hold ourselves back. And a lot of times that holding ourselves back is the fear, because if we do that, maybe we won't make money. Maybe we won't be able to make money. And if we don't make money, we're going to die and we're not going to survive. So we don't step into that potential that we have inside of ourselves. But when we create that calm nervous system, when we create that surrender and trust with money and create the safety feeling, it allows us to step into that potential that we have inside of ourselves and really take that next step in our life, in our business, in all areas.
Wow. Really, really well said. There's so many threads there that I want to pull apart, but before we get into how you create the calm nervous system, because you have a really unique and holistic approach to it that I love, let's talk about some of the reasons why we go into survival mode with money and how that affects our nervous system and what the cost of that is. Because I think that it's not just the individual bias of the brain, right? The evolutionary bias towards finding a problem and surviving, but it's also our culture. Our culture is very competitive. The Darwinistic view of evolution is very, dog eat dog. It's survive or die. And how that gets played out through the social conditioning, through our programming, maybe in our families, or how money's talked about at home, and how that builds a nervous system that isn't really going to thrive until it ends that story or changes its story.
There's a couple threads I want to pull on that. It was the first one in regards to, money isn't taught in school. How to manage it, what to do with it, how to think about it. We are not taught. We are expecting ourselves to know because we think everyone else has it figured out.
That's a great point.
We think that everyone around us has it figured out, but we weren't taught this. So every belief that we have and all of the knowledge we have is either mostly from our parents or influential people in our life, which probably weren't taught it either and probably went through a lot actual survival mode, depending on, how old you are and which country, where we're from, all of it. A lot of times our parents and the influential people in our life have their own money wounds, which then brings it back into us. And we don't know any better because we aren't taught any better. But then we see everyone else talking about money and we judge ourselves because we don't know any better. We judge ourselves for not knowing, but we have no reason to know. So the number one thing is letting go of the judgment that you have about yourself and see it as an exploration of, I'm excited to learn about this topic. I'm excited to dive into it and let go of whatever wounds or patterns have been, brought onto me, and actually see it as something I'm proud of myself for, because whatever I've done up until this point has been completely for myself and by myself, and like what I've like self-generated and self-taught, and now I'm ready for the next step. I'm proud of where I am, and I'm excited about diving into it some more. So that's like the first thing, where it's like when we realize that most of what we believe in and what our beliefs are based on society and based on family, and especially this concept of we shouldn't talk about money. It's all internal. And the second thing in that more societal side of things is that hustle culture has become something to be proud of. And we have this direct correlation that we think that action and doing and productivity means more money, which is so far from the truth.
That's a nugget right there.
So the society says that the more you do, and especially as solopreneurs, which is why like this goes to everybody, of course, but this is why I love working with solopreneurs, because everybody has money shadows, everybody has money monsters, it flows. But really, when you are responsible to generate your own level of income, those monsters, those beliefs, when you are your business and you are literally receiving money for your time, your expertise, all of them, and you have to keep doing. And the more you think that you do, the more you think money is going to flow. You can like drown in that.
Yes.
Essentially, it reflects your relationship with your trust in yourself. It affects your relationship with time, because you're always constantly thinking, what can I do so that I can receive more money? And the way that I kind of bring this back to the truth and the reality is something I think I've shared with you before, is this analogy of money is like a female orgasm. And we've said this before, where the more we force and the more we do and the more actions we take does not necessarily mean more money is going to flow. There needs to be this trust, this surrender, for the magic to flow. The more we do, the more we're in that forceful energy. Just because we're in our business taking more action, if it's a forceful energy, it's not going to actually allow the money to flow. It's actually probably going to repel it based on what your beliefs are around that. So it's finding that balance between aligned action and that surrender and trust and love for yourself and love for money, and embracing that energy and that gratitude, and finding that balance, which creates more balance in your life, creates more work-life balance, and actually allows more flows of money to come through. And I've seen this with clients that are struggling to reach their first 5-figure months. And then we work together, and every single time they go into a meditation, they come out with money flowing to them. When they finally take care of themselves and they open themselves up and they find that surrender and trust with the aligned action, it all just flows so much easier. And not only do they end up making more money, but they make more money with more ease and more flow and more enjoyment in the fact that they're actually living the dream life that they want to be living.
Oh my God. I love that you compared it to the female orgasm, and that you also talked about like flow and trust, because the experience that I've had as a solopreneur, and I've actually been an entrepreneur for more than 10 years, but the solopreneur journey is actually very unique for exactly what you described. And it is, I think, the rawest form of having to step into that trust. And it's one of the times that's the hardest, because it feels unnatural to be like in a place of trust. My first business was a startup, and I had investors. So I was able to pay myself a salary. My first 2 businesses were that. It was stressful for sure. It was stressful in a lot of other ways, but I had investors. There was money. And when I actually left that and I became on my own as a consultant, still I was being paid, an agreed amount before I started. It was very different than when I became a hypnotherapist and coach more recently, and I gave up everything else. And I said, okay, ultimately, like, I'm the product. I am the marketing. I bring in my personality and the things that I say, and my energy brings in the customers. And then I also have to balance my coaching and my energy exchange with the fact that this is how I eat. So all of a sudden, if the only training you have is I have to survive, it puts you right back into that survival mode. It was such a leap having to go into that place of trust. And I decided to take a money mindset health workshop. And I was surprised to find that first thing we did was work on our second chakra. And after that, I said, okay, I'm going to focus more on my second chakra. And I was doing like hip dancing and Latin dancing, and suddenly money started coming in. And I was like, what the hell is going on? And that's why when I found you and you started putting language to that and, reasoning behind it, I said, okay, this is something that everyone needs to understand, that I want to understand more deeply.
Because when we are in when we are the solopreneur and it's like we eat what we kill, we end up in this idea that like, what should I be doing in my business so that I can make money? Because we want to receive the money. But the thing is if we're constantly thinking about what should I be doing to make money, it might be pulling us out of the alignment of what it is that we actually want to be doing in our business, pulls us out of alignment of like the true vision or the grander vision of what it is. And it might not actually be the direct correlation of what's going to bring you money. And it ends up being the thing that ends up limiting you most likely in your business.
Absolutely, because when you're in a service-based business and you're coaching, you want to be able to give to your clients, and you don't want to feel depleted. And the whole reason you become a solopreneur is that you don't want to do all the other stuff, right? Like there's so many things that you realize you don't want to be doing. So it is such a process of getting into that trust. And it was after one of our conversations that you had a really good point, and you had a terminology for it. But essentially, the concept was, you said, I bet you that there's an amount that you bring in every month and you don't go under it, and you're able to, pay your bills. And I thought about it, and there was. And ever since then, I've been able to just trust. And that trust has allowed me to focus on the things that I really enjoy in my business and give more to my clients and just give more. And I was like, wow, this doesn't even make sense. So let's talk about that concept that you introduced to me.
Yeah, it's the fact that we all have an energetic minimum. It's what we are an energetic match to. And if you look at the last 6 months of like income that you've generated, 6 months to a year, you'll probably notice we always have this fear that, oh my God, if I stop doing in my business, I'm not going to generate any money, and it's going to actually like dry out, have zero income, and I will not have any money. But if you look back, chances are that's never actually happened to you. You've somehow brought in, even if it's a few $100s, there will always be some sort of amount that comes through. So starting to become aware of what that energetic minimum is allows you to see what your energetic match is. Because no matter what, once you realize that, you can play with that and be like, there's never a reality where I would make under a certain amount of money. And everybody has different amounts. Like some people have an energetic minimum that no matter what, I will always figure it out and I always make enough money to keep a roof over my head. But if you think about it, you have an energetic minimum of the amount of money that comes into your life that you receive, whether it's through your business or any other way. Money flows to you for you to be able to take care of things in your life at some extent. So if you look and see all of the money that's flown to you in the last 6 months to a year, you can start realizing that there's a certain amount that no matter what, it can't even be a reality where you wouldn't have that amount actually come in. And when you know that, you can trust it, you can see it, and then you can play with it, because then you have your energetic minimum of like, okay, let's say your energetic minimum is $2,000 a month that comes through every single month. And every now and then you have a $3,000, a $4,000, a $5,000, and you start seeing that those amounts come through, and you can start feeling what it feels like to have those amounts come to you because you've experienced it. So now you can start playing with being like, I know there's no reality in my existence where I wouldn't have $2,000 come to me in this month. But I also am energetically aligning like to 3,000, to 4,000, to 5,000. I know what it feels like. I can get into that energy. I can get into that field of what it's going to feel like at the end of this month. if $5,000 comes in. And then you can look at you are like, okay, my goal is $10,000. So you can start playing with what's it going to feel like when that's actually the case. And as it starts, you can start raising that energetic minimum, playing with the 3 different levels, and start seeing it and noticing it, witnessing it as it grows.
And I love that you're talking about it in terms of energy, because one of the things that I realized when I was able to, calm my nervous system and step more, haven't done it fully, but step more into that trust, is I actually had more energy, and I had more energy for the work that I love, showing up to my clients and in the world with more and more energy. I mean, even to do this podcast, right? A podcast grows your audience, but it's not an immediate return. And I've wanted to do it for years, but because my energy was so focused on, okay, I've got to get to the next step, I want to build this business in this way. So yeah, when you step into that trust, or when you start having that in the body, in the feeling, you have more energy. And
being in survival mode is exhausting.
It's exhausting. And it's scarcity based, because in terms of some of the more lower calibrating levels of emotion or emotional states or consciousness, scarcity, I think we talked a little bit about shame. Shame is quite associated with the unwillingness to talk about money, or the avoiding the subject. Even this conversation we're having right now could be making people uncomfortable. And maybe there's a time in my life it would have made me uncomfortable as well. And, sometimes it's fear, right? So all of those things keep us in these lower states that just drain the energy, as you said, exhaust you. So as you start to bring more energy up, and I think you're changing your vibration, I found you talked about magnetizing money or attracting more. And it's not just money, it's opportunities, right? So you have there's a different value exchange that you just start experiencing right away, really. I think I've heard you say before, it doesn't make sense. And for me, there's periods of time where I worked so hard on a funnel. I spent months putting a funnel together, and I had a very strong business plan with it. And I can get down with the Excel, and I can make a plan, and, on paper, this thing's going to really work. And then another month, I spend the months dancing. And guess which one is more? Guess which one I actually...
Yeah, my life does not make sense. If I
Yeah.
actually think about how little I work and how much I do and how I travel around the world and do whatever I want, it does not make sense. And I'm okay with that in the most beautiful way.
And it's such a reversal of everything that I've been taught, or everything that I've absorbed or understood. So let's talk about the ways that you actually bring this into your nervous system, because I have said these words, I have said the affirmations, I have thought these thoughts, and it didn't make a damn difference until I felt it in my body. So that, I think, is the shift into this nervous system understanding of money and abundance.
Yeah. So I always say there's essentially 3 steps in regards to creating a calm nervous system around money. And the first is going into the shadow work and looking at the beliefs that are holding you back. Because we can say the affirmations, we can try to get energetically aligned all we want, but if we have beliefs that are holding us back that we may not even know about, nothing is going to matter. And that's really uncovering that. And I always say, no matter where you are, what your history is, what your beliefs are around money, there's 4 core money blocks that everything can be narrowed down to, which the first is scarcity. That's, of course, there's never enough, money is hard to make, got to save for a rainy day, all those things where we feel like there's not enough. We're in that survival mode. There's also guilt and judgment around money. I live in Bali, and there's so many people here. I'm purpose driven, not money driven. And they feel guilty about being money driven, or they feel judgment where money is evil. So and no matter how much you do in your business, if you think someone who has a lot of money is not good, you will never have a lot of money, because you could work 20-hour days. You will never allow yourself to be someone who has a lot of money, because you don't like the person or people who have a lot of money. And the third is worthiness. This is why I work a lot with female solopreneurs and solopreneurs in general, because you are putting a worth to your time and your energy and your expertise. So the worthiness comes so much into play when it comes to money, whether you don't feel worthy about money in general, or you really need to work on your worthiness and confidence of what it is in your business. And this comes through in regards to always giving discounts, or wanting to give things away for free, or for testimonials, or having a hard time pitching yourself, or having a hard time raising your prices. it comes into play so many ways. And the fourth is self-sabotage. And this is a tricky one because we can get through the scarcity, know that money is like amazing and wonderful and gives you more impact, and we can make sure that we're so worthy for all of the things, and then money flows into our life because this shit works. And then all of a sudden, a bunch of money flows to you and you're like, oh my God, I don't know what to do with this. And you freak out. And this is where it's raising your nervous system to be comfortable at new levels of wealth. And this is where my money management comes into play, because we are self-fulfilling prophecies, we always want to stay where it's comfortable. And if where you are in your wealth is where you're comfortable, when you reach that new level of wealth, you can freak out. It's not comfortable. So this is when unexpected expenses all of a sudden start incurring into your life, or you get into a feast or famine spending cycle because you're comfortable at a certain level of wealth. So that's looking at those shadows that are playing a part in your business, in your role, in your experience with money, and looking at those head on. And this is where I go a lot into the shadow work, into the somatic work, actually moving with your body and the experiences you've had, and like letting that go, where I'm sure hypnotherapy would be a really good part of it as well, is looking directly at the shadows and at the beliefs that are not serving you and tackling them first before you can get energetically aligned to anything, because they're holding you back. They're preventing you from getting into the ease and the flow and getting to that next level of wealth. And then the second step is the money management. And this is, knowing your numbers and feeling confident to make financial decisions. Because without feeling confident to make financial decisions, our nervous system isn't going to be comfortable with that level of wealth because we don't know what we want to do with it. And this doesn't have to be super in-depth. Money management can just be knowing your numbers, as in just tracking what your revenue and expenses are, and knowing what you want to do with your money. And this doesn't have to be a formal forecast or a big business plan. It's just really knowing exactly what you want, what the life you want to live, and how much that's going to cost, and allocating your money accordingly. Because when the money comes in, you want to be in the energy of, I am so fucking excited for this money to come in because I know exactly what I'm going to do with it, and it's building this life that I want to live. And when you're in that energy, when you feel confident with numbers, when you are actually managing the money and feel responsible enough for it, that creates that calm nervous system to level up in the wealth that you have. And then the third is the energetics. That's getting into your energetic minimums, not just with the amount of money that's coming in, but also the amount of money you hold. I've had clients that were making $200,000 a year, had no idea what was going on in their business, lived a broke life because they spent just as much as it came in, and they realized they were making like $200,000 a year, and they're just like, how am I not building the life of my dreams? So then we started playing with the energetic minimum of how much money they held, and getting out of that mindset of, I live a poor life. And so that was the first step, getting out of the I live a poor life mindset, getting into the management of knowing what the numbers were, and then getting into energetic alignment of how much money she held. And not only did she start living the life she started dreaming of, she actually ended up getting an inheritance and got so much extra money coming to her because of all the steps that we went through. And the energetics also plays a big part. I do a lot in human design. I'm a manifestor personally, which learning that absolutely changed my life. Because I'm only 8% of the population, I work so differently that knowing your energetic blueprint of how to work in your business also creates so much more ease, because when you flow with the energy that works for you, money flows, ease flows, you have more energy to work in your business in a way that actually feels right for you, which just creates more ease and flow and calmness in your business. So those are pretty much the three steps and how they come together.
I love that you concentrate on all three, because I think that there are many ways of, coaching mindset around money that just focus on one or the other. Like, as you said, it could be too energetic, right? There could be no looking at the numbers. And I do think there is that tendency to avoid looking at the numbers. I mean, I went through periods of time where I wouldn't look at my bank account. Like, it gave me agita.
Yeah. And bury my head in the sand.
Oh,
it's
totally.
Okay.
And I think it's quite common. And also looking at the actual beliefs, like, what do you unconsciously believe? And this was not a conscious, competent step, but this was really uncovered to me in my early 20s. I came from a family of middle class, but there were 4 kids. My dad worked and my mom worked part-time. And it was always, there was never enough money. And it was always, money's hard to come by, and you have to work really hard. And there was a lot of virtue attached to being a hard worker. And I watched my parents both work really hard. Eventually, my mom started a restaurant, and I watched her work very hard. And we still didn't have any money. It was confusing, right? It's like, okay, so I'm supposed to work really hard to be a good person, but we're always broke and there's never enough. And I happened to get a job at a hedge fund in New York. So I left Texas and I started working on a trading floor in New York. In 2005, it was like the top of the market when, it was just money everywhere. It was a very different environment. And for me, I'd always been attracted to things like that. I was working at a recruitment firm in my first job in Dallas and making like no money. And I was like, wait, this is adulthood? I'm broke. And I was recruiting for IT firms. And one of them was looking for a position at a hedge fund in Dallas. So I went down to meet the hiring manager. And I walked into this office and there was like original artwork on the wall. And they were talking about how the person who got the job, they got their breakfast, lunch, and dinner made by the in-house chef. And they went to the in-house gym. And I was like, what is this place? So I was very attracted to that. And I said, okay, I want to go work at a hedge fund. But I had like a 2.5 GPA from a very average school. So I got an assistant job and ended up right on this trading floor in Soho, New York. And I had no idea what I was getting into, but I just knew I wanted to be in that environment. And within that year, I just watched people who were just able to do things that I never thought possible. I was booking private jets for them to fly on. I was, getting them, reservations at a tasting menu of $1,000. And it was just like, this is wild. But what it did for me to be around it is, one, it kind of broke a lot of the beliefs that I had from my parents, because I was actually working for some of the most generous people and they were, wonderful people. So there was none of this, like, these are bad people. I just wasn't experiencing that. So I also was in an environment where they expanded the view of what's possible, right? So the energetics were kind of working for me without me really focusing on it. But what happened would be I left the job and started my own business, and then I'd be broke, and then I'd, be able to raise a lot of money, but then sell for too little, right? So that self-sabotage.
Patterns that would keep.
Yeah. So even though the energetics for a while were okay, the self-sabotage would come back because I actually never looked at the original beliefs. I actually never did the work. And even when I was there and I was getting these bonuses, I actually still felt like I don't deserve this. I'm not one of these people. They all went to Ivy League schools. I shouldn't be here. They're going to find out.
Not worthy.
The gig's going to be up pretty soon. I mean, and, my job wasn't making investment decisions. It was like running the office and, making sure that there was paper in the printer and shit. So I was well qualified to do it. But I still had that issue with the belief and that, it's going to run out and it's going to be up. So that really resonates when you talk about the imposter syndrome and the worth and the self-sabotage.
Even in that, I always talk about, in regards to worthiness or pricing, is like a lot of people downplay what it is that they do and the impact they're making. And even in that instance there, you're like, oh yeah, I put paper in the printer or whatever. But think about how much they were able to focus on their genius because you were there to help support them in their life, and how much more money they made and how much of an impact that created in their life.
Yeah.
Which means, of course, you were worthy for all of the things and all of the money and whatever it is they were giving you, because it's not about the thing that you were doing, it's the value that you were providing.
And, that's a great point, because as the years went by and, my own value went up because it was reflected actually in the financial return that I was getting. So my value went up enough to the point where I could say, all right, well, I'm going to start my own business. And I could turn around and say, okay, I have a good investment for you. So there was so much that happened just by being in that environment that that allowed, as you said, the value and the worth to eventually go up. So what is your when we talk about nervous system and the energetics, what are some of the practices that you use to get it into the body?
Yeah, of course. Well, in general, one of the first things that I always go through with my clients is having a money date Monday.
Oh, I love that.
So this is something like you have a relationship with money. It's one of the most important relationships in your life. However, you tend to ignore it. You don't like it. You speak bad to it. And you really kind of hate that you have to have it in your life. So imagine that being a relationship and how you treat your partner or your mother. Of course it wouldn't be a good relationship, and of course they wouldn't want to be there for you. So think of the fact that you are dating money. You are working on your relationship on a weekly basis. You're putting time and energy into it. So, every week, and, I always talk about money management. So it's good to know what your numbers are, even if it's just looking and opening up your bank account once a day. But instead of it being Financial Fridays, I need to go through my numbers, it's a money date. So you do something to begin with, kind of like a sandwich compliment or a compliment sandwich, kind of a energetics with the management side, where you start something where you like maybe go into, and you go through the steps, you maybe go into a little bit of like something that makes you feel good about money. You work on it, whether you dance around or you journal or you do a meditation or whatever it is, and you feel good and you feel abundant and you feel capable to handle potential stress that comes up from doing the actual numbers and the money, getting yourself prepared, then going into the management of it, looking at your numbers, getting confident about like what you want in your life, looking at your bank account, planning out the week, being intentional with how you want to experience money over the next week, being grateful for the money that you have, and then closing it out with another like positive experience, whether it's gratitude, dancing around, meditation, again, whatever it may be. And it doesn't have to be long. It could just be a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, do the management, another like 1 minute to like close it out. But really focusing every single week on knowing your numbers and doing some sort of activity to be intentional with how you're going to experience money for the next week.
I can see how that would make a big difference, because we talked about being afraid to like open and look at your bank account. So if you can associate, like you said, the sandwich compliment, the positive activities, the celebration, the change of the way that you're characterizing the relationship with it, you can remove that like that chest tightening feeling of like, oh God, what did I spend, with something completely different. So I can actually see how that is a step that people can apply right away to actually change the feeling in their body.
And it's really important to be really conscious of like when you're looking at your bank account, when you're looking at your numbers, there's a fine line between judgment and anxiety and empowerment and awareness. And this can play into a lot of different things. So when we go into our numbers, we can get really caught up in the judgment of ourselves of, I can't believe all this money was spent. I shouldn't be spending it this way. I can't believe how little there is there. We can get into the anxious and judgment side, but it's a conscious decision to go in and look at your numbers, look at your bank statement and say, I'm doing this because by knowing my numbers, by looking at my accounts, I can become empowered to make confident financial decisions. And I'm building awareness around the finances in my business and being very conscious to stay away from the judgment and anxiety and step into, I'm doing this for empowerment and for awareness that's going to help me in my life.
Wow, I think that is such a mindset shift that makes a huge difference, because what we're essentially doing, even when we focus just on the money aspect, because it's so linked to survival and life, that we're actually raising our energy and kind of rewriting generational trauma that can filter into so many other areas, especially when you talk about doing the shadow work first, because those beliefs are going to be linked to a lot more. So it's like really shifting your consciousness into what I think is going to be so important in this new paradigm that we're moving into, where there's less feelings of scarcity, there's less lies and stories of shame and guilt, and doing it through money and starting there can actually create a bigger impact on your nervous system and, mindset in general.
Yeah. And if you go into it with gratitude, and also like a lot of times, a lot of my clients have had really bad experiences with math specifically, which is what they correlate with money and numbers. But if you think about it, your finances aren't really math, it's just organization. So if we get away from the idea that finances is actually math, which it really isn't, it's organization of numbers, it's not math. So if we can let go of the math beliefs and also just look at the organization and also look at it from a place of, I get to organize this amazing thing that I have in my life that's here to support me and allows me to do all of these really incredible things. Like I've had clients where like their partner literally was like, okay, let's just look at the numbers you have in your bank account so we can see what your worth is. And she was doing it and he was guiding her through it and she was bawling her eyes out. She could not do it. She was freaking out. And then all of a sudden, within 1 month of working with me, she's like, oh my God, I went in and I looked at all this stuff and I was so excited to organize it. And I was so
Wow.
excited to see all the amazing things that I have in my life. And it's such a conscious shift, but it really is that when it's a nervous system reaction, it's a conscious shift into organization, into gratitude, into the way that we see it and the way that we look at it to be able to find not just calmness, but like excited energy around it.
That is such an interesting thing that you said about the association with math, because I was going to ask you what are some of the common money beliefs, and that association with math has to be a big one, because I know that I've had that as well, where I said, I'm bad at math. I always grew up being like, oh, math is hard. I'm bad at math. I hate math. Well, and then it turned out I started my own business and I had to know how much money was coming in and out. And I was like, oh, actually, I'm pretty good at this when there's meaning behind it and it's money. And then I was like, oh, but algebra, geometry. Well, I got really into, numerology and sacred geometry. So it turns out I'm actually not bad at math if it's something I care about, something I give a shit about, right? So it's one of those shifts that I made about math separately, but I didn't really think about the energetics of I'm bad at math, I'm bad at money. So that makes a lot of sense. What are some of the other big shadow beliefs or money beliefs that people have that come up when you start doing the shadow work?
Yeah, well, essentially most of them fall into one of those 4 categories, which is essentially the scarcity, the guilt and judgment, the worthiness, and the self-sabotage. And the number, I guess, one exercise to kind of blend it a little bit is, we always say like we just do like affirmations. We always want to do affirmations every single day. I just expect everything to be different. But the thing that I find with affirmations is unless there's like a physical feeling of belief behind it, you're saying it and it can actually work against you. So if I were to sit here and be like, I'm going to make $1 million tomorrow, I'm going to make $1 million tomorrow, I'm going to make $1 million tomorrow, if it is so far from what my belief and my nervous system believes, it actually creates more doubt and will reject money coming to me because I'm so sad and doubtful of the thing that I'm thinking that it works in the opposite direction and pulls me away from what I believe. So the number one thing I say in regards to, I still believe in affirmations, but I believe there's a way to rewrite them. And it's essentially when we become aware of what the limiting belief is, we start noticing it as it happens in our life. Then we forgive it. So the steps are essentially we notice it, we become aware of it, we forgive it, we investigate it, and we choose again. So a lot of times this is like what Gabby Bernstein says, there's a lot, and like Louise Hay, they say become aware of the thought, forgive the thought, choose again. But I find that just creates, like I said, that this disconnect between I'm not just going to choose again from this belief that I feel in my body. So to give you an example, this is like a really big one I have with my clients and something that I had personally, which is why it took me 4 years to start my business from when I quit my job, because I had this belief that like nobody has enough money to pay for what I'm offering, or it's not good enough, or I'm literally trying to get people who are anxious about money to spend money on me when they don't have it and they're scared of it. This is not a good business opportunity. I shouldn't start this. It's not going to work. And that stopped me from this business for a really long time, where what I do isn't needed or whatever it may be. So I started to become aware of that, started to move through it. So whenever it came through, when I'd wake up and I'd be like, there's people out there don't have enough money, or the people who need my services don't have money, or they're anxious about it and they're not going to spend money on me. And if I start my day in that belief, my day is going to play out very differently than if I wake up and I notice that. And instead of beating myself up over it, because a lot of times we do that, we're like, I can't believe this is coming back. I can't believe this is like, I thought I got over this. I went over, I like investigated yesterday. I changed it yesterday. Why is this coming back? Why is this holding me back? And we beat ourselves up over it, which only again brings us down further. So we forgive that thought, because we have these neural pathways that consistently, if we have this belief that's pretty like dug in, it's going to be the first belief that we have, and it's going to take a lot of effort and a lot of time and a lot of conscious shifting to make it actually change. So we forgive it, we forgive ourselves for thinking that, and we're like, we understand that's that reptilian brain. I know you're just trying to protect me. Thank you for trying to protect me. But if I actually look at the truth, let's investigate. Let's see what this actually, how this actually plays out. Thank you for protecting me or trying to protect me, but let's look at what the truth is. And I'm like, okay, what I'm doing, is it so needed in the world? Are there so many people out there that need what I'm doing where it could actually really change their lives? And I feel it in my body when I'm like, that is a total fuck yeah. Like, I know that to my core. That isn't like any of those doubt beliefs there. Like that, I know it is so good. Then I'm thinking, okay, well, are there people out there that will do whatever it takes to make the money or get the money to be able to work with me so that they can change this in their reality and change their life so that this isn't their reality anymore? And I'm just like, yeah. And then when the first few times that's actually happened, where people are like, I actually have someone right now who's off like applying for a grant for their business from the government to be able to work with me. So they're asking me for like emails so that they can apply for the grant. I've had people be like, I don't know where the money came from, but all of a sudden I received all this money because I knew this is what I wanted to do and I want to invest in myself. So as soon as that started actually happening, I would anchor in that thought and be like, I'm anchoring in this. This is the truth. So then I'm just like, now I know that's the truth. I'm like, okay, so if I know that, then am I willing and am I dedicated to continuing this and moving forward to find those people so that I can change their lives, and knowing that they're going to invest in me so that I can change their lives and change the reality in a as grand as I can make it be, so that this is something that helps change the world and the shift in the energy around money. And I'm just like, fuck yeah, I got this. So when I stand in front of the mirror and I'm just like, there are so many people out there who need what I have and will do whatever it takes to make the money and give me the money so that I can shift their reality and make this change in their life, and I'm so worthy of it. I feel it. I feel it in my bones. I feel it in my heart. And then the actions I take for the rest of that day are going to be very, very different and create very different results than if I just woke up and was like, oh shit, nobody has money for me. And then I stand in front of the mirror and I'm like, people have money. What I do is great. And then continue my day.
That sounded less believable, of course.
Yeah.
And essentially what you're doing is you're stepping into alignment and focus with the people that you're working with and the people that you can help, and then knowing that you can help them versus the noise, right? So you're aligning with that, right? And that makes so much sense. And the work that you're doing,
and opening up for that. That's like the new thing that I'm actually working on, is like, how do I open up and how do I like work with my clients and opening up to the clients, the money, the desires, and whatever it is, because we can be so closed off. So how can we, literally open ourselves up in like energetically to be able to receive all the things, and even like to the point where my new thing is like, I'm opening myself up to the unbelievable opportunities and experiences that are coming my way that I can't even manifest or even think of with my limited human brain.
I love that.
The things that are coming for me are so much bigger and grander than what I can even imagine or think in my brain. And I'm just opening up for that. And literally the last time I did that, I within an hour got invited to go one of the most luxurious villas in Ubud, which is actually where I found my who is now pretty much going to be my life partner. And it just literally within an hour, it just created all these stream of events where I just opened myself up to be like, I am here and available for all that I desire that I can't even fathom right now. And that's the energy that you move forward with and step into.
Wow, that is so powerful and such a testament to the work that you're doing. And the work you're doing is important and it's courageous because what you're doing is you're breaking spells and lies that were cast upon us for generations. Because we've talked about money, but we've talked about raising the vibration and raising the consciousness. And a lot of times people wouldn't equate those things or think one is antithetical to the other. But that sort of understanding that abundance is our birthright, that that religious spell that money's bad and you don't want to be near money was so that the church could have all of it. And it's a lie. And it doesn't serve us at all to believe that. And the work that you're putting out very courageously is actually shifting that for the clients you work with, and that contagion is going to reach more and more people. So thank you for the work you're doing. And just to end on that note, to anyone who's still feeling that, how do I serve people in a coaching or spiritual capacity and still desire and manifest and attract abundance without the conflict? What advice would you give them?
Yeah. Well, money is not good or evil. It does not really have anything. So if you are someone who sees yourself as someone who's doing good in the world, having more money gives you more power to do more good in the world. It allows you to create a bigger impact. If you have more money, and even if a lot of times we get judgmental about ourselves, that if I have more money and I have a maid that cleans my house and a landscaper and someone who looks after my kids and all of these things, that I'm being selfish, or if I want to spend a lot of money on clothes, that's really selfish. But the thing is that money allows you to be the best version of yourself. And that might trigger some people, but it's absolutely true. Because if you want to spend a bunch of money on clothes because it makes you feel good and you strut your stuff and you're more confident and you come into the world and you embrace the world in a more confident version of yourself, that is impacting the world in a beautiful way. And if you are someone who is a coach or a healer or whatever it may be, giving things away for free is not helping the world. Having someone invest in themselves by investing in you for the work that you are doing is what is helping the world. And you receiving as much money and spending it on yourself however you want so that you have more time. If you have someone who looks after and does all these things for you, you have more time to take care of yourself, to be the best version of yourself, to be able to work more in your business, to create more of an impact. More money creates more impact. And that's just the truth of it.
I love that. Nikki, thank you so much for everything today, all the wisdom you shared. You dropped so many bombs that I just love to share with the audience. So how can people work with you? How can they find you? What are you working on now? What can you share about that now?
Yes, of course. So you can find me on mostly Instagram. It's where I'm inconsistently mostly active.
I hear you.
But find me on Instagram. It's just at Nikki Bartol in my name. I also, through that, you'll be able to find a link. I have a WhatsApp group where I do free monthly calls, where I actually just started that. We're going to go through a call next week, which is really going to go through the eclipse energy and releasing all the stuff that came up through the eclipse and releasing all the money stuff that happened there. But it's going to be monthly calls that'll go through the collective energy of money. Think like energy healing and exercises and money advice, and maybe even a chance to have some hot seat coaching. So that's a WhatsApp group you'll be able to find a link for. And I have a group program called Owning Your Income. It is only available for women. I do work with men, but find me on Instagram. My group program is a 4-month-long group program, which goes through all of these steps. You get community support. You get the course that goes through all of the theory, and we actually even have guest speakers that come in once a month. It's a beautiful membership with a community of other solopreneurs that really, really support each other through this journey and through the entrepreneurship journey as well as the journey with money. And then of course, one-on-one. But you can find all that information on Instagram or my website, which is nikkibartol.com.
Thank you so much, Nikki. And I will be definitely joining your Money Date Monday call this Monday. I can't wait to dive into the eclipse energy because, wow, that's a big one. We'll talk more about that off camera sometime. But thank you so much for today. And we'll talk to you very soon.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.